happy for this squad. BYU 9-0 and ranked number 6. Welcome back to BYU Sports Nation with Spencer Linton. I am Jeremy Jordan. This morning I spoke with one of my best friends, Dennis Pitta, who we try and make time for on the show. We frequently do not, but today we did. And here's my conversation with my homie, Dennis. We finally made time for you, Dennis. I tell him every day, hey, we got to make time for Dennis. Today we make time. So what do you make of BYU's 9-0 start and, of course, the miraculous finish and winner at Utah over the weekend?
Well, first off, it's great to just be one-on-one with you today, Jeremy.
We need this.
I mean, we've had a lot of distractions. There's been Spencer. There's been other co-hosts. I think this is important for our relationship. Absolutely. Yep. That we're just one-on-one, kind of get to hash everything out, and we'll see where this takes us. But listen, in regards to BYU, if you asked me before the season if I would think this team would be 9-0, I would have laughed in your face, to be completely honest. And I think that was probably most people's honest opinion about this team based on what they did last year, based on the difficulty of the schedule and everything that was kind of, in front of us. But, man, they have far exceeded my expectations. And, I think it's been awesome. And there's nothing better than being able to crush the hopes and dreams of every Utah fan in the state of Utah and countrywide. And so that game last week was awesome. And I watched it from start to finish. We had people over until the very end. We were sitting there with, mild expectations and very little hope on 4th and 10. But man, was it awesome to see, a good call made in a critical situation. I think a lot of referees would be afraid to throw the flag in that case, but I think it very much impacted the play and was absolutely the right call. And it extended the drive for BYU. And ultimately, BYU made the plays down the stretch to win that game. And so, I put myself on the other side of the coin there. And I think, man, if I was a Utah fan, would I have been happy about that call? No, I wouldn't have been happy about that call, especially in that circumstance. But you cannot deny the fact that it was the right call. And people forever will complain about that and say you shouldn't have thrown the flag there, but it was holding and it impacted the play. And who knows, JoJo Phillips maybe gets that ball. I mean, Jake Retzloff dropped back and that's where his eyes went immediately. And so as soon as he saw his guy get held, he had to come off of it, and then the pressure got him. And so it was the right call. And unfortunately for Utah, their AD, their fans, they've got to live with this one.
And it was, it was a unique situation after the game as well. A lot of reaction from a lot of people, Mark Carlin included and whatnot. BYU's 9-0, Dennis. How are they doing this? Because they are 4-0 in one-score games. They've been able to win the close ones that some teams have not. Reminds me of TCU in 22, where they were making plays to win games at the end.
Yeah, I mean, you watch kind of what they've been able to do throughout the course of this season. It's really been the defense has been the catalyst for all of these wins. And the offense has played great. And Jake Retzloff is, I think, like I mentioned earlier, has far exceeded all of our expectations. And he's been tremendous. And kind of the poise and moxie that he operates with, I think, is important, especially when you have close games and down the stretch. I mean, it didn't seem like he blinked at all in that final drive against Utah. And time again in these close games, I think he's made the plays when he's needed to make the plays. And that's huge. And that's what you have to do as a quarterback, especially a winning quarterback. But for me, the defense has been the big surprise this season and been the catalyst for all of these wins. I mean, what they did in the second half against Utah, not giving up a single point, I think was unbelievable. And, especially what Utah had done in the first half, and particularly that second quarter, putting up 21 points. And for them to completely shut them out in the second half, I think is huge. And, game after game, they've just been opportunistic. They've generated turnovers. And ultimately, the game of football comes down to turnovers, the turnover margin, the turnover battle. It's always the key indicator in whether you win or lose a football game. And BYU has generated turnovers, and the BYU offense has really been opportunistic when they get the ball back in those situations and made other teams pay. And so that's been a winning formula for them. And I think they're playing really good, confident football. And the offense didn't play unbelievable against Utah, but that's a really tough environment. I played a couple games there, and I've never won at Utah. And quite frankly, offensively, we've played very bad in those games in Utah. And so we've turned the ball over. We've had a bunch of mistakes, and it's not an easy environment to play in. And so they did enough to come away with the win. And in games like that, rivalry games on the road against a tough opponent that's, been underwhelming this year, but, they were a highly ranked team going into the year, and they've got a ton of talent, and BYU managed to get away with a win. So that was huge.
Sometimes you need to go +3. It ends up being 3 because there's a fumble on the kickoff at the very end. It was 2 until that moment. You have to be +3 to win that game and barely win that game. And BYU's been great at just making sure they win. Are they flashy? Do they look like Oregon? No. But do they have 2 wins in the top 16? And are they ranked number 6? And are they the 3 seed right now? Yes. Yet, big game with Kansas. You look at a 3-6 Kansas team, Dennis, and you go, well, they should win that, right? You look at Kansas closely. This team has lost 5 games by 1 score. They've been super competitive. They were picked to be pretty good in this league as well. The line is only 3, some places 2.5. This is an interesting one coming off the high of Utah. So how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I think this will be an interesting game for a lot of reasons. Number one, Kansas is a much better football team than their record indicates, and you just alluded to all that. And they're playing good football right now. And I think that's what's important. Football, you can start a certain way, and you can have some tough, close losses like they've had. But at the end of the day, what are you at the end of the season? And, I think Kansas is battle tested, and they've gone through a lot. They've had a lot of challenges and adversity that they've had to play through. And that oftentimes makes a team much better down the stretch. And so this is going to be a very good Kansas team, and a team that, like you mentioned, was, highly thought of coming into the season, and a team that had a ton of success last year. And so they have playmakers, and they're going to be able to move the ball, and they're going to, play aggressive, and it's not going to be an easy out for BYU. Now, the fortunate part of that is we get them at home at night, a game that I'll be at, my first BYU game this season.
Heck
Fortunately,
yeah.
I get to go to that one. So I'm very excited about that. But
who's texting you right now?
Yeah, somebody's trying to call me. I don't know who it was. I don't have time for that.
Come on, Max.
But I think it was Spencer. He's trying to tell me he's coming in right now.
Probably.
Yeah. But man, it's going to be a tough test. And I think really the next 2 games are critical for BYU. This Kansas team that's playing really well. They just beat Iowa State. And then you have an ASU team that is very capable and has some real playmakers on both sides of the ball. And they have to play at ASU. So those games will be tough. And I think BYU certainly has the confidence to be able to do it. They have, the players to do it. I think the coaches are doing a great job throughout the course of the season. They've put their players in position to succeed. But man, I mean, it's always difficult to play good football after such an emotional win like they had in Utah. Coming down to the final play, you're just so emotionally drained. You're relieved that you were able to go, up to Rice Eccles and finally get a win that's been a long time coming. And you just hope that there's no emotional letdown, because that's human nature, and that's kind of the nature of sports and football. And so we've seen it time and time again, that these are considered, somewhat trap games. And I talked about this a handful of weeks ago. I still do a lot of shows for the Ravens, and the Ravens had a huge emotional win one week, and then they go to Cleveland the very next week, and Cleveland's a terrible football team, and they completely lay down and play down to their competition, and they lose to Jameis Winston and the Cleveland Browns. And man, the Ravens are so much better of a team than Cleveland. But it's just the nature of football and sports that you just, for whatever reason, cannot match the same level of emotion, intensity, and focus throughout the week of preparation that you necessarily need to, because you're still so focused on what happened the week before. So hopefully BYU can get over that. Hopefully the coaches are framing those messages right now, and they'll be ready and emotional and focused and poised to play a great football game, because they're going to have to beat Kansas.
And if they keep winning, the college football playoff is an absolute reality. The Big 12 title game is an absolute reality. How are you handling the possibility that should BYU continue to win, and even if they drop one, they could still make the Big 12 title game, that those 2 things are in play in reality in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's crazy to think that, BYU's in a position, a very good position with great odds to be able to make the college football playoff. And listen, this year in college football is really funny because there's a lot of parity. And I don't think you would, maybe outside of Oregon, but even Oregon, I think isn't unbeatable if you watch some of their games. And I just think there's not, a team at the top of this thing that you say, oh, nobody's beating them. I think there's just a lot of good teams and not a lot of great teams this year. And so BYU has a real opportunity to not only make the playoff, but if they get into the playoff, I mean, they have a real chance to win some games. And it'll be really interesting to see how this all shakes out, because you have a lot of teams with 1-2 losses and good football teams, historically good football teams. But I think one thing that the NIL has unintentionally done is it spread the talent kind of across the country. And you're not so heavily loaded up on Alabama and Ohio State and some of these true blue blood programs for whatever reason. And I would have thought that it would have been the opposite, that, those big programs that can pay the most money and provide the best NIL and all that kind of stuff would have the advantage in this. But I think the NIL in conjunction with the transfer portal has spread the talent across all these different teams. And you just don't see these heavy front loaded teams, being heavy favorites in this thing. And I just think any team is capable at this point. If they make that college football playoff, I mean, I don't know what the betting odds will be, but I think, you probably have, 12 of those teams that could probably win it, to be completely honest. And so I think BYU is in a great position. I cannot stress enough how, I guess to my own fault, little belief I had that BYU would be in this position at the start of the season. But they have continued to impress me and prove me wrong. And it's been fun to watch.
You're not alone. It's been an incredible ride and very special 40 years after 84. And who knows what the next couple of weeks look like. But certainly BYU needs to win on Saturday to keep this ball rolling. Dennis, you validated why I say every day, shoot, we missed Dennis, no time today. We made time for you, and it was awesome. I look forward to seeing you on Saturday, man.
Thank you. I'm excited to be up there, and let's be honest. You say that sarcastically every day,
what are you talking
and you don't actually want me on the show. You're threatened by my presence, and certainly today proves it.
That's a strong. That's a strong word for it.
I am disappointed in Spencer, though. Didn't even have the decency or the respect to show up today when I was going to be on the show.
He shows up in here, Dennis.
Yeah, no, I'm going to have a lot to say to Spencer when I see him next. So,
okay,
but looking forward to Saturday.
Yeah, I want to see that conversation. Maybe we'll stream it live on Twitch for money or something. Who knows? Dennis, thanks for the time, man.
Thanks, Jerem.